we are looking at another cup of code. Just want to run through quick one, JSON ignore properties or JSON include properties, how you can use those on your Java classes or POJOs or database entities, where you're able to map your request or response payload in a way that you want to ignore certain fields when it comes to your API responses, and how better you can handle those values. So I'm just going to use the last project that we had. And essentially here we do have a controller. I'll just use the same controller, and I'll just add a new package here with a Pojo. Nothing much. Let me just add it at this level here. I'm just going to say new package, and then I want to just say entity, and then finish. And our entity, I will just add a new class here. Let's just say new class, and then I'll call this employee. So let's say you have this Java object right here, and you want to include the JSON ignore properties. So the first things first here, we just want to say add JSON. So we're going to use the JSON ignore properties annotation. So this annotation can be used to either suppress serialization of properties during serialization process, or ignore process of JSON properties read. So this is where we want to tell Java, or we want to tell our code which properties to include, or how to handle them, or how to ignore them, and all of those things. So for now we want an ignore properties, which is that, and then we want to say ignore unknown, which is true, which means any field that is not defined within this object, do not pay attention to it, just forget about it, we don't care. And the next thing that we want to do is we're gonna start with the JSON include now. With the fields that we have, which ones do we want to be included, or yeah, to be included in our response, and which ones shouldn't be. So we're just gonna use the JSON include like that. Then we're going to say JSON include dot, or let's just say, for now I'm just gonna use these as we go, and I'm going to explain them, what they do and what they solve for. So we're going to start with non-empty. Non-empty is essentially for string objects, objects that can be nullified, and objects that can be empty. Hence I'm using string objects, because a string can be null and can be empty at the same time, or the values can be absent. So if you look at the docs on the side, so the value that indicates that only properties with a null value. So if it's nullable, then you can use non-empty. It will apply to those. So basically, we want all our fields to be non-empty, which means all our fields, we want them to have a value. If they do have a value, give it back to us. If they don't, no need to include it. So now we're just gonna have a couple of fields here for an employee. Let's just say private string, first name, and the next thing we're gonna say private string, last name, and the next thing we're gonna say private let's say int mobile, then private long, let's just say fax, for the sake of doing this, just adding fields here. Not really that your employee would have all of these necessarily. Some of them will be on contact details, but I'm just adding fields so that you see what happens here. So I want to do something here. I'm just going to, let me just add my getters and setters here, so that you can see them. I'm just going to select all of them and generate those. So that's fine, like that. So now non-empty means any of these fields that are not empty or null, just give us back that. If it's null or empty, don't give it back. So now let's see this in action. So I'm just gonna use my controller here, which already exists. I'm just gonna create a new one. I'm gonna do a get mapping, and in the get mapping I'm just going to say data. That is fine. Let's just do public let's just do public response entity. Let's just do that and then get, let's just say get data. Nothing fancy that we're doing here. We're just getting data and that's it. So yeah, I just want to call employee. Let's just, this is our employee is equals to new employee, and that should be fine. And then we want to return response entity dot okay. Just give us okay, and we want this to be employee, right? So we want the body to be employee, just like that. So that's fine. So now this is what we have, and we want to see what this empty object basically is going to give us, which fields are going to come back from here essentially with non-empty. Let's say this in action. So with non-empty, let's see this in action, and this is demo. It's not the API that I want to test. Let's see, is it running? Let's just run it here. Then let's come back here. This is the endpoint here is data, right? So the endpoints that we're pointing to is data, which is that. So let's do data, and yep, okay, started. Then let's do that. So boom. So you see we have mobile and we have fax. Those two are primitive types. So essentially if you look at them, a the default value for a string is null, of course. Default value for first name and last name and email, it will just be null because those are the default string values. But for mobile and fax, the default is 0, not null. 0 and null, two different things. That's why you've always been told 0 and null are two different things. So default value for mobile is 0, and default value for int is 0, and for long is also 0. So right now that we have that on our fields, let's do something else. So non-empty, we're still getting some fields here even though we didn't set anything, right? So now let's do non-null. Let's do non-null, which non-null, let's see, this is non-empty. We've just discussed that, so the values must be null, and that's it. So non-null is essentially the same as non-empty, but it doesn't check for absent, right? So what does that mean? Actually, non-empty, let me show non-empty. Just go deeper in the string. So let's do this. So in this example here, if you look at this, I've just added a empty string in first name. So empty string means there's nothing there. So let's save this and come back and check it again. And let me just send this. Let's see. First name still not there. Now I'm just going to add a space here. Save. Come back. Send. Let's see. Is it still setting up? Evaluating. Should be fine now. Let's check. Right. So you see, because the string is not empty, there is a character there of space. That's what we added. And now you can see that non-empty, it checks the string if there's something in there. If there's nothing in there, which means the value is absent, like they are saying in the docs, absent values seen and absent. So if there's no value here, then it won't take it, like it does with last name right here. So in the same way, that's how it solves for not null. So non-null, let's go for non-null now. Say non-null, and we take this back to what it was. So if you check non-null, is only checking for null, and that's it. So let's go check for non-null. Let's look at this. So we're coming back here and we say send non-null. Everything that is null is not here, and of course int and long are primitive types, so they basically have default as 0 and not a null value as default. So that is non-null. That's what it means. So once we say, let's put an empty string here, save this, come back, and then send it through. So you see, this is an empty string, not a null string. Those are two different things. An empty string and a null string or a null object, two different things. So this is an object of an empty string. Basically, that's what it is. So you can see I'm using this. I'm using the initializer to do this because I want you to understand how you can use these values within your object definition here, so that when you get to this level here and you start setting the values at this point, let's say you wanna set email, right? Let's set email to an empty string like that. Save this, then I can just remove the first name here so that you can see what's going to happen now. Let's see, it's done. Right, so let's send that. So now you see email is an empty string and it comes back on non-null. So that's what it is right there. So now how do I make sure that I only want the fields that do have values, not just the fields that that are zero or null or whatever. So now to use that, we can just use non-default. So non-default is not to say null or empty or whatever. It just says non-default is, if I say here, initialize this to QWERTY, save, this QWERTY is the default value for first name, and for last name it will be null, for mobile it will be 0, for fax it will be 0, for email it will be null. And because those are default values, it will exclude all of these for as long as I have not set any of these or set first name to QWERTY. Now let me show you this. Let's come back here and then let's get that. Let's see. So email is coming back because email is empty, like we said right here. We set the email here, and you see it. It's appearing this side because the default value for email is not an empty string; it is null. So now let me show you. Now I'm going to change this to set first name, then we're going to set first name as QWERTY, like that. Save this. So now you will see that all the other values are not showing because by default they've defaulted to their Java defaults essentially. That's why it's not even picking them up here. But now first name, the default for first name is no longer null. It is QWERTY. So let's do first name and see. You see, so even first name is now not showing, but we've set first name here. What does this mean? We've set the default value that we gave it here, which is QWERTY. Hence, this side, it's regarded as non-default and therefore it will be excluded. But if I change the name to say name, save, and we come back to this side and say send, then you realize now first name is there. Boom, right? And in the same way, if now we say employee dot set mobile, I'll just say 1 2 3 4 5, and then let's now save this and send this. Now you have mobile 1 2 3 4 5. So only the fields that are populated or have values are being set or sent back to the user. Any useless field that is not needed or doesn't have a value won't be on the response. So that's it for that. And also the one thing that I want to show is it's not only at the class level. Class level covers every field that we have, but we can also move this, the JSON include, to the field level, where now we are targeting a specific field instead of the entire class. I'm just gonna paste it like this. So for string, I would rather use non-empty, because I'm gonna check for empty and null. Then I'm gonna do the same here, non-empty. Let's see. Then for mobile, I'm just gonna say default, and then fax, I'm gonna say default. And then for email, I'm just gonna say non-empty again. So now when I save this, I want to make sure that my string are not empty or null, and then my long or numeric values are not default, which is 0. That is what we want here. Then when we come back and we say send, now we are going to get this data that we expect, and everything else is excluded. So we can come back here and then do let's do QWERTY, so that you can see that because QWERTY, now we've set QWERTY, and here QWERTY is the default value, and we are not using at default annotation here, we're using non-empty. Name will still be there, the first name will be there, but it will be there as QWERTY. Let me show you. Let's see, send, boom, QWERTY is there, because now the field is not empty or null, it is just set to that value which we initialized right here. So I hope you get this, guys. I hope you understand these annotations, and I hope you can be able to use it in your projects to optimize your response on your APIs or your microservices. For now, please do like and subscribe, share with other devs. Until the next one, cheers.